We can barely imagine a whale's life, let alone what's in their mind. One man is ready to try. It's a journey into the deepest thinking. He'll find intelligence and capacity for emotion. There's ingenuity, risk, and reward. We see tenderness and curiosity. Whales have loving families, rivalries, and music. Putting it all together, what emerges is the unexpected. Alaska calls humpback whales from the warm Pacific to feed together in its rich, deep waters. Filmmaker and marine biologist Rick Rosenthal's journey into the whale mind begins here.
It looks like a good day to spot whales.
He's on the trail of a particular humpback that's defying all expectation. He finds his whale alone, patrolling a rocky shore. Every April, she comes to this one bay.
Here she is, right next to the rocks. Right through here, I'm looking through the spruce trees. I'm in the forest and she's in the rocks right below me.
What's she thinking? It's dangerous for her to come into the shallow water.
Animals often act on instinct, but may also be thoughtful and creative. One way to separate invention from instinct is to get to know an individual. This whale has a reputation for having a mind of her own. Rick follows in his stealth kayak for a closer look. She ignores Rick. She's bubble net feeding. Humpbacks trap a school of fish by blowing a wall of bubbles and imprisoning them inside. Rick puts on his dive gear to join her in her world.
I've never hidden in tree branches before to film a whale, but this might be my chance to see what she's actually doing in the shallow water.
Underwater, something is strange. She's unusually silent. She's made a discovery that she doesn't want to share. Bite-sized baby salmon. Humpbacks are not salmon eaters. She's alone, not afraid of people, and trying new tastes. This humpback is up to something. Her secret is just around the headland. There are tens of millions of juvenile salmon in the Hidden Falls Salmon Hatchery. She times her journey perfectly. She's come thousands of kilometers, yet each year she arrives just before the salmon release begins. Her scars show she's already had close encounters with cables and boats. Baby salmon are reared in closed nets suspended from pontoons anchored in the bay. As the young smolts grow, some escape and feed a few locals. The salmon still in the nets are now ready for life at sea. The side nets are dropped and 2 million fish swim out of each pen. The hatchery has varied the time of the first release, but she has always arrived ahead of them. This year, they tow some of the pens out of the bay, away from the greedy eyes of the whale. The salmon are intended to augment the wild stocks, which have been declining. Their plan underestimates the whale. She has silently followed the pens. There's little the team can do. It's illegal to harass or harm a whale. The fact that a huge calculating brain is at work here is no consolation for John Pierce, the manager of the hatchery. Livelihoods are at stake. It's a battle of wits, whale versus man. Investigating whale ingenuity takes Rick to Arctic Norway. Under the Northern Lights are some of the richest seas on Earth. Here, sunrise and sunset meet for a few hours between long nights. Rick and Captain Andreas Heider are looking for killer whales or orcas.
Ever see them mount? They mount to go down. Yeah.
Killer whales feed on the huge shoals of herring that overwinter in these waters. A family pod coordinates the search with their own repertoire of clicks, whistles, and pulsed calls. The calls can be heard from far away and help keep the family together. Once they find the herring, the whales corral them into the shallows using high-pitched sound. The fish crowd together. The family uses this to their advantage.
It looks chaotic, but it's a coordinated attack. The herring are in panic mode, and dozens of whales are now sharing the feast.
The whales now fire an intense, short-range sound that jams the herring's nervous system, stunning them. The family delicately pick off disabled herrings one by one. They're so successful they can afford to be fussy. Only the tender middle part of the body is eaten. Few animals on land hunt with such sophistication. On the other side of the world, Rick finds killer whale ingenuity under very different circumstances. Off the coast of Mexico, predators are in a constant quest for food. Prey is spread out and difficult to come by. This ragged band of transients wear the scars and parasites to prove that it's tough here. These killer whales work undercover, silently. Prey is wary. Possible food appears from below. Whiptail stingrays are armed and dangerous.
Stingrays sometimes are coming right towards me. I don't want that on my chest. I'm pushing them away. I don't want that stuck in me.
The killer whales, too, seem to know to be careful.
That whiptail stingray has quite a spine, and it's venomous. If they get that in their tongue or their mouth, there's going to be some serious pain there.
The whales must have recognized this ray from the several species without a poisonous spine. They take time to consider. It's valuable food, but dangerous. The whales are working out how to deal with the stingray. They softly chirp to each other in whispers. These whales are stalkers. They work quietly.
The lead female would come in to check it out, then pull back to let the other one smash it with its tail. Really looks like they're passing on that information, that knowledge, how to stun the stingray and take it as food. You don't want to get between the orca's tail and the stingray, or you're busted up.
The family tries the technique in turn. The lead whale takes her ray to share with the rest of the pod. This is not instinct, it's creative. Whales can see a problem and think of a solution. A humpback in Alaska is a lone inventor, an original. She's waiting for the next batch of salmon to be released. She's daring to push the limits, swimming confidently around the nets and boats while she waits. The hatchery staff are planning their next move too, plotting to outwit the silent leviathan lurking below. The manager has chartered a commercial fishing boat. The little salmon are sucked up through a specially designed pipe. 2 million fish will fit in a live well on the boat.
It's incredible that one whale is pressuring them to go through all this.
There's no way for the humpback to sense what's inside the pipe or the boat. The ship, with one penload of salmon, heads for a release point far offshore. There's no sign of the humpback. It's a win for the hatchery. Or so it seems. A proportion of the salmon returns to the bay. Our humpback whale patrols the shoreline and soon finds them. Dozens of pens remain. Removing the rest of the fish will take too long. Meanwhile, crowding is bringing disease. There's a new plan. Instead of opening the nets on all 4 sides, they drop only one side of the enclosure. The salmon swim out, but can dart back into the pen in case of danger. Our whale wants more than just a few stragglers. She wants them all. She swims below the net that lines the bottom of the pen. Then she blows a massive bubble under the pen in a brilliant attempt to flush the fish out. She understands the problem perfectly. Rick is hoping to see the whale swim beneath the net.
I know she's down there somewhere, but the water's so dark, it's hard to see anything.
No one could have imagined what happened next. She slipped unnoticed into the pen with Rick. Not a ripple, not a sound. "12 meters of whale in a 12 by 8 meter pen.
That's a giant whale in a little swimming pool.
She hasn't got in by chance. She's daring enough to maneuver through the small opening again and again. In this game of strategy, a wild whale has clearly beaten us, 1-to-1, brain to brain. Most whales appear briefly, magically, take a breath, and then return to their world. The Azores are fringed by canyons running deep underwater. There, over a kilometre below, live sperm whales and giant squid. Rick listens with his hydrophone to the Morse code of clicks and calls of the sperm whales far below him.
I can hear them. The whales are clicking away.
Sperm whales call in phrases with specific meanings that maybe even amount to a language. They certainly have family dialects.
They're moving off down the underwater canyon. I can hear that they're getting further away.
Rick needs to get back to the support vessel fast. He can't afford to lose them.
Once we're at the surface, we can't lose visual contact. They're masters at slipping out of sight.
Sperm whales spend most of their life cruising the abyss in darkness. Coming up from below, how different the world of light and air must seem. They've been holding their breath for about an hour. They need to recover. Rick uses his kayak to approach the whales quietly. Pedals drive fins that move in the same way that fish swim. This is a family pod. Sperm whales live in matriarchies. The females are in charge. Grandmothers pass on 80 years of wisdom.
They can see me, but they zap me as well with their sonar. They're making a sound picture of me.
Here in the Azores, whaling was banned in 1986. The older generation of sperm whales are veterans from that war. Now, after 30 years of protection, trust perhaps is starting to return.
It's not like Moby Dick, the big whale that sunk the whaling ships. These are really tender, sensitive animals.
A female glides along on her back. The family caresses belly to belly. It's not courtship or mating. It's more like hugging, but without arms. As they rub together, they groom each other, removing dead skin. It must feel good when you don't have anything solid to scratch on. A youngster seems to delight in the moment. He appears to close his eyes. Their sensitivity to sound is phenomenal. They can hear each other's heartbeat through the water.
The family's splitting up, so I need to make a quick decision about which group to follow.
3 teenagers swim off together. One of the youngsters makes a beeline for a small ball-like object covered in barnacles floating at the surface. He rolls on his back and feels the texture, maybe to understand what it is. In a liquid world, any solid object is worth investigating. The sperm whale's mouth is a precision weapon. They can grab fast-moving fish and squid and hold on to them in total darkness. It takes practice. The 3 youngsters pass the ball between them. There's an enthusiastic chatter of clicks.
Seeing the whales playing ball and having fun, I knew that this was something very special.
A sperm whale teenager probably has the longest and most complex education of any animal. They have the biggest brains, 5 times the size of ours. There's a massive mind here, as well as a playful heart.
Sadly, they only give you a short time to look into their lives. And then they're gone.
Off the Atlantic coast of Patagonia, killer whales' hunting strategy is also hard for them to learn and has huge risks. As orcas cruise the shallows, they must judge the tides, waves, and underwater contours perfectly. Experienced killer whales charge up onto the beach to grab a seal. Others watch and learn. It takes years to master this hunting technique. Any mistake can mean stranding or even death. It's worth the risks. Sea Lion Island is a nursery for elephant seals and a seasonal hunting ground for their predators. The mothers left the pups on their own weeks ago.
These elephant seal pups don't seem to have a clue about what could be waiting for them out in the water.
Seal pups live by their instincts rather than by thinking about things too much. That's probably for the best. Some elephant seal pups are swept off rocks and forced to swim before they're ready. Along the shoreline, dodging a 3-ton male elephant seal, Rick finds grisly evidence of how dangerous these beaches can be.
I thought I was here to film killer whales and their dramatic attacks on elephant seals. That's not what I found. It's a dorsal fin of a killer whale, buried under tons of sand. It looks like this orca paid the price for coming in too close.
Rick is hoping biologist Giulia Ecoletti can shed some light on the buried whale. She's part of a research team studying elephant seals and killer whales. Giulia tells Rick that under the dorsal fin are the remains of a large whale that the researchers named Leo. Each spring for years, they had seen him and his pod mates hunting elephant seal pups in shallow water.
The one in the middle.
A few weeks ago, something went very wrong.
The first thing I thought was, okay, we got to save him. So just go into the water and, I don't know, push him away back to the sea. I want to save him. I don't want to, I don't want to watch him dying, because he was dying. You could tell.
The pressure of his weight out of water forces up his last meal.
The worst part of that is that we kind of realized that we're nothing much we could do about it. While we were trying to put him back to the sea, we saw the other 2 males. They used to burn in 3. It was Leo, Pinone, and Topone.
This is the pod.
That's the pod, the 3 males. And while Leo was stranded and crying, Pinone came several times.
The rescue team heard him calling. His pod mates stayed close despite the dangers and all the researchers being in the water.
And I remember there was a fin of Pinone just right in front of Leo, just resting in front of Leo.
Many hours later, Leo's pod mates were still there beyond the surf line, waiting. Leo died in the dark. Towards dawn, the surviving killer whales left and were away for many months. Whales and dolphins are famously sensitive to distress, even from other species, and sometimes seem to want to help.
What struck me was the other pod mates calling to him and waiting nearby and watching. They knew what was happening. They realized that they were losing someone they cared about. There's an emotional wisdom there.
The strongest bond of all is between mother and calf. At Rarotonga in the Cook Islands, a humpback mother and newborn arrive. The calf is less than a month old, born on the 8,000-kilometre journey from the Southern Ocean. Over the next year, she must teach him everything he needs to know to be on his own. Attending her is a young male, a suitor. He's ahead of the other males and hoping to catch her eye early. He wants to escort her on the next leg of her journey within Polynesia as a protector and mate. Her only concern is for her calf. She shields the youngster from the advances of the male. She helps her baby to the surface to take a breath. The suitor remains attentive. She ignores him. Time is running out for this gentle approach. A posse of rival males is about to arrive. To understand humpback whale courtship, Rick joins Nan Hauser, who's been studying humpbacks for over 20 years. Nan and her colleagues have discovered that relationships, whale style, are complicated.
Flow! Flow right here! 50 meters!
It's the gang of rival males. The newcomers have a much more physical strategy. Their breeches and tail slaps are intimidating to other males and a chance to show off to females. They move in on the mother and compete to push closer. The suitor tries to keep them at bay. The gang's assertive tactics are no more successful than the gentle courtship of the suitor. Mother and calf move on and leave the islands. The males all stay. More females will arrive soon. And when they do, the gang has a new plan. Courtship in most animals is about strength or display. With whales, everything is a bit more subtle, a bit more individual. Grey whales come to Magdalena Bay in Mexico to breed. The males wait for the females to arrive. Instead of competing with each other, this small gang entertain themselves. They roll on the bottom. When the surf comes up, they head out to the break and catch some waves. Even for whales, surfing can take some practice. You need just the right wave if you weigh 30 tons. There's a sideways move that doesn't always work well. Upside down is another way. A spin, maybe. Lift your tail, and you nail it.
They must be having fun. They're riding the waves over and over again. After they catch a ride, they turn and head back out to the surf break. This is just a magic moment.
The female whales could be watching from a discreet distance, admiring the best surfer. They could be choosing a partner, but they're not. They are far away at the other end of Magdalena Bay. There, they approach small boats and solicit human attention. They even bring their newborns along. This is a wild mother approaching people. There's no obvious benefit. Scientists have different theories as to why grey whales here seek human attention. The whale's curiosity and tactile affection may be a clue to what they think and feel. Like the sperm whales, they seem to enjoy being touched.
I've watched these interactions for a number of years, but it still amazes me how the whales are so trusting.
This was first seen in the 1970s, and slowly more individual mothers took up the idea. For the tourists on the boat, it's a wonderful fleeting moment of direct contact between human and whale. The sound of singing encircles Rarotonga back in the South Pacific. The courting gang of humpback males is practicing their new tactic. The gang has become a choir. Our frustrated suitor has joined 3 other males on the reef to sing. They've decided it's better to work together. Nan Hauser works with other scientists throughout the South Pacific to record humpback whale songs. The songs are some of the most complex in the animal kingdom. Patterns of calls make up phrases. The whales repeat each phrase like verses, forming a longer song. The concert can last for hours.
Oh, this is right below us.
Nan takes Rick to an area over the coral reef where she's frequently recorded the singers. whales are part of courtship, yet scientists also believe that there is data here about their long-distance travels from the pole to the tropics.
The song is so intense, I can feel my entire body tingle from the vibrations.
The whales often sing the same song with individual variations. But every year or two, a new song reaches the island.
I can hear two singing,
Yep.
you know, so awfully cool.
Some competition.
They're right together. And there are two songs going on.
Far out.
It's very special, huh?
Yeah.
Better see if we can get on top of them again.
Okay. Let's go.
Back in Nan's office, Rick and Nan studied the day's
I
recordings.
see these usually.
We actually hear one whale teaching the other whales this song. So they mimic it. So for instance, if they start a phrase with "moo, moo, moo, moo," you hear the first whale singing that song very loudly, and then you hear the second whale copy it. So it's almost like an echo. And sometimes it's really fun because they're singing two different songs, and then after listening to them for about a half an hour, you see them, or at least one of them, incorporating the song into his song. So they actually have this transfer of phrases of songs. It's beautiful.
A new song ripples across the Pacific, passed from whale to whale. It can travel 6,000 kilometers from Australia to French Polynesia. Then, a year or so later, a new humpback hit emerges. Humpbacks, it seems, are dedicated followers of fashion. What is extraordinary is that the song is communal and personal. It contains information and emotion. It reveals something of their inner world. There are clues into the whale mind, if we're lucky enough to know where to look.
After filming whales in many oceans over many years, I come away with a feeling that although they're different from us, they're also a lot more like us than I ever thought before. They have families. They play. They're curious. They can learn. They pass this knowledge on. They have a deep wisdom.
Each insight, though, raises many more questions. The truth is, we've only just touched the surface. In South America lives a group of extraordinary animals. They are amongst the most spectacular creatures on Earth. They have fascinated us for as long as we've known of them. They are hummingbirds. and their glittering colours and their prowess in the air are unmatched. They are the celebrities, the stars of the bird world. But what do we know about these unique birds? Well, they are tiny, dwarfed by a scientist's hand, amongst the smallest warm-blooded animals on Earth. And we can see that they live their lives in the fast lane. In flight, they are just a blur. It's only when you slow down their supercharged lives that you can begin to understand how they live. High-speed cameras reduce the speed of the action. 1 second stretches out to 50 and enables us to look into the secret world of the hummingbird. Much of their lives still remains a mystery. What we do know is that hummingbirds depend on flowers for their food. Nectar fuels their frenetic lives. And that hummingbirds are only found in the New World. Most live in South America, and this is where our story starts. Here, many plants employ hummingbirds as messengers. But this wasn't the original contract. When flowers first evolved over 60 million years ago, there were no hummingbirds. The first flowering plants depended on insects as their pollinators. Today, many plants still do. As butterflies move from flower to flower, sipping nectar, they take pollen from one plant to another. The plants are fertilized, the insects are fed. This was the original arrangement. The plant and insect relationship has been a long and successful one. But at a certain point, some plants dropped their insect messengers. The reason can be found in the forested mountains of South America. Here, the mornings are cold and damp. Butterflies can't fly in these conditions. Insects are cold-blooded. Their bodies are the same temperature as their surroundings, so they are lethargic in the cool of the morning. In the mountains, insects are unreliable messengers. There was a need for a safer pair of wings. We may never know for certain where this change of messengers took place, but somewhere in South America, perhaps on the ancient plateaus of Brazil, plants acquired a new partner. It probably happened about 50 million years ago. In the cool climate, plants needed a reliable messenger, and there was a bird that could fill that requirement. A bird that possibly looked like this saw-billed hermit found a new way of making a living. This ancestral hummingbird was most likely an insect and spider eater, its heavy bill adapted for grasping its prey. At some point, the earliest hummingbirds started visiting flowers. Did they do it to extract insects from the blossoms? Perhaps. But as soon as the habit developed, then the birds could carry pollen from flower to flower. And the first hummers could not only catch insects, but also drink the nectar. The original hummingbirds, with their heavy bills, were relatively large and rather clumsy flyers. But this was the beginning of a long relationship with the plants, and the birds evolved to better suit their new ways of life. Over millions of years, bills became lighter and thinner to better probe the flower for nectar. To reach the flowers demanded great flying prowess, and the early hummingbirds became smaller and more agile than their ancestors. As well as thin bills, the birds developed long tongues to probe the flowers and sip the nectar. Reaching the nectar demands a huge amount of energy, and so hummingbirds did everything to lower their weight. Their legs and feet became so small that they could no longer hop or walk, they could only perch. They were already leading an extreme way of life, living on an energy knife edge. The early hummingbirds offered a reliable service to their plant masters, able to fly in all weather conditions and get through with the pollen. For many millions of years, hummingbirds remained generalists, feeding from a wide variety of flowers. And many plants took up with the new pollinators. Today, there are over 8,000 different kinds that depend on the birds. But there was a penalty to the New Deal. The plants had to supply more food for their dependable warm-blooded messengers exactly for that reason. Warm-blooded birds use 10 times more energy than the cold-blooded insects they replaced. A hummingbird drinks more than its body weight in nectar each day. And hummingbird flowers produce a copious amount of liquid to suit their messengers. It was thought that hummingbird plants produced orange and red flowers to attract their messengers. But the story is more intriguing than that. Bees are red-green colorblind. The plants were hiding their precious nectar from these insect robbers that can't see the difference between red and green. Whilst making it obvious for their feathered couriers. The hummingbirds too paid a price. To further protect their nectar from insects, the plants made their flowers long and thin and placed them at the end of branches. Only an animal capable of precision flying could reach the flowers. Hummingbirds had to hover, and that cost a great deal of energy. Input, high-energy food, but to obtain it demands high-energy output. Hummingbirds were forced into a precarious energy balancing act. Holding perfect position in space is a hummingbird trademark. No other birds can do it. Though the similar-sized bananaquit does try. But in truth, compared to a hummingbird, other birds look clumsy. The reason is the way hummingbirds fly. All birds, except hummingbirds and swifts, their distant relatives, gain power and lift on the downstroke, then fold the wings for the upstroke and repeat. Hummingbirds keep their wings stiff and do not fold them. Instead, they rotate at the shoulder so that the wing twists, giving lift and power on both strokes. The extra power gives the hummingbirds a great advantage, and they can claim to be the most accomplished flyers that have ever taken to the air. Until recently, there was nothing that could compare with a hummingbird. That is, until a high-tech company in California invented a robotic one. It flies just like a real hummingbird, gaining power on both wing strokes. It's a truly remarkable achievement. It's so realistic, it even fools real flesh and blood hummingbirds. This Allen's hummingbird owns this suburban Los Angeles garden, and it's not prepared to share. Things reach a crisis point when the robot hummer approaches the real hummingbird's nectar feeder. Time to attack. The feathered hummingbird is only a quarter the size of the robot, but he still tries to drive off the interloper by dive-bombing it. The robot depends on battery power and can fly for a few minutes, but real hummingbirds can stay in the air for hours. Their special mode of flying gives the hummingbirds the power to maneuver in all sorts of ways. Unique among birds, they can fly backwards. They can rotate on the spot, even fly backwards and upside down. The plants, with their hard-to-reach flowers, had produced the ultimate aerial acrobats. All this virtuosity in the air costs energy. When flying, hummingbirds have the highest oxygen demand of all vertebrates. Wings beat as fast as 80 times a second. The problem is getting oxygen to the flight muscles. When the bird is perched, the heart beats around 400 times a minute. In flight, it rises to an astonishing 1,200 beats per minute as the heart pumps oxygen-rich blood to the wing muscles. Even this is not enough when hovering, and so the heart expands in size so it can pump more blood with each beat. When this happens, the blood circulates around the whole body, heart to lungs, to heart to muscles, and back to the heart in under 1 second. They're living at the edge of what is possible. Extreme aerial athletes with extreme needs. It's no surprise that when they're not flying and feeding, they rest and conserve energy. Hummingbirds spend 80% of the day perched, and so they have time to stretch muscles and groom all-important feathers. Showers provide another opportunity to clean and brush up feathers. Unlike insects, hummingbirds seem to relish the rain. So when the skies open, the minute birds take to the leaves to bathe. Even a banana quit joins in. But bathing can only be a short interlude, for hummingbirds need to feed on average every 15 minutes. Starvation, death, is only ever a matter of hours away. It's essential for birds with such a precarious energy balance not to waste time visiting flowers that contain no nectar. But is it possible that hummingbirds can remember all the flowers they've just recently visited? This might appear straightforward when you have only a few flowers on a stem. But what about when you face the task in an ipe tree? Even here, hummingbirds can and do remember the flowers they've visited, a great feat for a bird brain. Plants have certainly shaped hummingbirds, their size, their powers of flight and hyperactive metabolism, but the birds can't live by nectar alone. They need protein, and this they catch on the wing with the most remarkable precision and aerobatic skill. Not all flights are successful, but most are. The birds need the protein to build muscles and replace feathers. The only problem is avoiding choking on the tickly little flies. Hummingbirds are unique in many ways, but they share with all other birds the need to breed. The male wire-crested thorntail has a bizarre way of impressing a female. Its courtship lasts a matter of seconds and was unnoticed until the high-speed camera revealed its unusual nature. For a bird living on a knife edge, the display appears an extravagant flaunting of energy. And it may be designed to do just that, to show off the male's fitness. Despite all his energetic endeavors, this female remains unimpressed. It's the female alone that builds the nest and tends the eggs. But for hummingbirds, even this is not straightforward. To remain on the nest long enough to keep her eggs warm, counterintuitively, the female has to lower her body temperature. Only in this way can she reduce the time needed to spend away on feeding. The most dangerous time in a hummingbird's life is when it's a chick. They must stay inconspicuous. Only when the down feathers on their backs detect the downdraft of their mother's wings will they silently beg. The chicks are fed a rich mix of nectar, pollen and insects. But despite all this attention, few nestlings reach adulthood. Even as adults, hummingbirds face severe problems. They have to refuel with nectar every 15 minutes. So how do they survive the hours of darkness? Every night of their lives, hummingbirds face a challenge: to stay alive until the morning. Their answer is as extraordinary as every other aspect of their lives. They go into torpor, a kind of hibernation. Their body temperature plummets, heart rate drops from 400 to 40, and they consume 1/100th of the energy they use when flying. This is a truly radical and dangerous solution, for whilst in torpor they can't move. There's no possibility of escape from a nocturnal predator that might find them. As day approaches, they start to shiver and warm up. It may take half an hour before they return to normal. Only by these extreme measures can hummingbirds survive to greet another day. Living an extreme, hyper-energetic life as they do, hummingbirds must ensure they have a supply of nectar. For most hummingbirds, this means guarding a patch of flowers large enough to support them. The flowers are a bird's lifeline. So even when it visits a plant to feed, a hummingbird keeps a wary eye out for possible nectar thieves, like this female thorntail. Most trespassers, when confronted by the rightful owner, back off and leave the territory. But in the main, owners defend their patch of flowers by the most flamboyant display of colour. Hummingbird feathers are extravagantly iridescent. The colours are not produced by pigments, but by layers of microscopic air bubbles in the feathers. The air bubbles refract, reflect and recombine sunlight to produce dazzling colours. The colours depend on the angle of sunlight, so hummingbirds can switch on and off their brilliant signals, flashing a warning to an intruder, but able to hide from an enemy. If the warning flash of colour fails, then a hummingbird will fight. Although tiny, they're not delicate tropical gems, but aggressive combatants. It's a matter of life and death. An owner must defend its precious supply of nectar. As befits the greatest flyers, much of the fighting is in the air. The aerial battles are really a fight for flowers, for without a territory, most hummingbirds are in deadly trouble. In northern Brazil, there are even temporary territories that last just a matter of hours. The cactuses that colonize the bare rock only reveal their flowers in the afternoon. In the morning, they're hidden inside these strange caps, and the rock garden is deserted. But when the flowers open, then hummingbirds appear as if by magic. They remember when the nectar becomes available. The birds feast on the copious nectar and in return carry away the plant's sticky pollen on their bills and pass it on to other flowers. The hummers carve up this miniature world, patrolling their airspace and chasing off interlopers. The temporary rulers of the cactus patch are fearless. They attack each other and ignore a lizard far bigger than themselves. But when it comes to bees and wasps, they retreat. Hummingbirds are too small to risk being stung. It would be fatal. The hummers stay and feed and fight and guard their prickly patch until evening. Then, as the light fades, they gradually slip away, to return next afternoon. Hummingbirds, with their remarkable adaptations, were an evolutionary success. They moved into a variety of habitats, wherever there were flowers that needed reliable pollinators. And about 17 million years ago, another opportunity arose as the Andes, pushed up by the drifting continents, grew ever higher. The volcanic Sierra reached up to over 5,000 meters, higher than the ancestral Brazilian plateau, creating new habitats. The mountains also brought new challenges. There was less oxygen at these dizzy heights, and the air is thinner. less dense. Some plants offered their feathered messengers support. The shining sunbeam clings to the fuchsia while it feeds, and so saves the high cost of hovering. Other birds found a different way to cope with life in the high mountains. The giant hummingbird has huge wings. The extra wing area makes up for the thin air. And the giant sweeps its wings in a vast arc to create more lift, the wingtips nearly meeting at the end of each stroke. The giant is the biggest of all hummingbirds. It's the same weight as a great tit, and perhaps this is the upper limit for hummingbirds. The Andes, with their wide range of habitats, produced an explosion of hummingbird species. Half of all the kinds of hummingbirds live in these mountains, along with their plant partners. And a few plants formed a closer relationship with their sexual messengers. This is Angel's Trumpet, and its flowers are enormous, 20 centimeters long. The nectar is produced at the far end of the tube, out of reach of most hummingbirds. This coronet simply doesn't have the means of reaching the nectar. Only one bird can sip from the angel's trumpet. This one, the swordbill. Its bill is actually longer than its body. It has the longest bill, relative to body, of any bird in the world. And that remarkable beak and equally long tongue allows the swordbill to feed where no other bird can. And a big bill can have other uses. The angel's trumpet is not the only plant to form an intimate bond with the swordbill. This is a kind of passion flower, and it too has a long tubular flower. The orange on the swordbill's chin is pollen. Each time it drinks from the passion flower, pollen is transferred back and forth between plant and bird. By forming this close liaison, the passion flower and the angel's trumpet increase the chances of their pollen being successfully transferred to a plant of the same kind. And the hummingbird has the nectar of the plants all to itself, so both plant and bird benefit. There's another hummingbird that has formed an even closer relationship. it has an exclusive deal with this heliconia. The heliconia protects its yellow flowers inside robust red bracts. The flowers are deeply curved. Only this bird can reach the nectar. Its bill perfectly matches the curve of the flower, like a key in a lock. As it feeds at its private flower garden, pollen is dabbed onto its head. The bird transfers the pollen from one plant to another, ensuring successful pollination. Because the sicklebill has the heliconia nectar all to itself, it has no need to defend a territory. Instead, it spends its day flying from one clump of flowers to another. And not needing to display its ownership of flowers, the sicklebill is not iridescent. Rather, it's quite dull, camouflaged against its exclusive flowers. The next chapter in hummingbird evolution was written about 6 million years ago. Some hummingbirds became even smaller. These micro hummingbirds are amongst the smallest warm-blooded creatures on Earth. They weigh as little as 2 grams, the same as a single penny. And they compete directly with the insects. They're not only smaller than other hummingbirds, they look dissimilar and they behave differently. Their flight is more like an insect's, as they roam freely through the forests, feeding on a variety of flowers. The mystery is why the tiny hummers, like this wood star, are not attacked by the bigger territory owners. The aggressive emerald ignores this little thief. Why? More mysterious still, the miniature wood star shows no fear at all as it plunders the emerald's nectar store. It might be that the emerald doesn't recognize the tiny wood star as a hummingbird. Rather, its small size and insect-like flight fools the bigger bird. The emerald even shares a flower with a little sneak. Could it be that the wood star is trading on the hummingbird's inbuilt fear of wasps and bees? This new group of micro-hummingbirds may have originated in Central America. From there, they've spread far to the north. The draw was flowers. But there is one major drawback to living so far north: winter. So each autumn, ruby-throated hummingbirds must head south before the flowers die and leave them without food. By September, they arrive in places like Rockport, Texas. Some may have already flown over 3,000 kilometers from Canada, but many still face their greatest challenge. They must continue south, and for some, that means crossing the vastness of the sea. The local people put out feeders to help the migrating hummingbirds. Each arriving hummingbird feeds furiously. They must gain weight, converting sugar-rich nectar into fat. In just 3 days, a bird will almost double its weight. This is the equivalent of a human of average weight putting on over 50 kilos of fat. The arrival of the hummingbirds is a cause for a party, and Rockport hosts the Hummingbird celebration. People come from all over North America to see these tiny travelers.
Most unusual pictures ever.
You're going to have to show it to your friends.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
At the peak of the migration, Rockport is temporary home to tens of thousands of hummers. This spectacle of so many hummingbirds can be found nowhere else on Earth, but it can lead to some people making a spectacle of themselves. The Hummer helmet is all you need. Once the birds have put on enough fat, they move the short distance to the coast. The time has arrived for the greatest test of their powers of flight. The nighttime journey, at least 800 kilometers non-stop, is an enormous undertaking for such tiny birds. A last sip, and the birds set off across the Gulf of Mexico. Much about the journey remains unknown, but recently scientists have tracked the birds using the Doppler radar of the United States National Weather Service. Designed to discover water droplets inside clouds, this sophisticated radar can also reveal the path of flocks of small birds, including hummers. Once they're beyond the range of the radar, their journey is shrouded in mystery. There is much we still do not know about hummingbirds, about their secret high-speed lives. But what we do know is that they are the most remarkable, colourful, energetic, and acrobatic of all creatures. They live at the limits of what is possible, nature's miniature masterpieces, and all because they are the messengers of plants. At the southern tip of the Australian continent lies a remote island. An immense wilderness, divided by mountains. It's a world of ancient forests, of pristine rivers, and a coastline that's both wild and beautiful. Its animal inhabitants are as extraordinary as they are bizarre. This is a land of black devils and white wallabies, where lights dance in the southern sky and trees tower to 100 meters. This is Tasmania, the weird and wonderful isle at the bottom of the world. Tasmania is full of surprises. Australia, yes, but with a twist. It was once connected to the dry Australian mainland. Today, along with its plants and animals, it's physically cut off. Though it lies just to the south, Tasmania is a world apart. Its isolation and cooler climate has created a sanctuary unlike any other part of Australia. And a strong seasonal cycle makes life here very different indeed. Winter means a struggle for survival. In Tasmania's mountains, there are meager pickings on offer. This is the last landfall heading south before Antarctica. Cold air from further south brings snowfall and freezing temperatures throughout these winter months. Many animals, like this female wombat, are Australian species, but their habits and lifestyles are most definitely Tasmanian. Mainland wombats are largely nocturnal. But here she feeds at any time of the day, kept warm by her thicker coat of fur. She must take every opportunity to find food. Winter is felt right across this island wilderness. Even lower down in Tasmania's forests, temperatures can fall below freezing. The first Europeans to explore these forests claimed they heard devils screaming in the night. And so Tasmania's most famous animal got its name. The Tasmanian devil. Primarily scavengers, they can smell a carcass from a kilometre away. And relative to body size, they have the most powerful bite in the natural world. They can easily crunch through bone. Devils once lived throughout Australia, but vanished as the continent dried out and humans arrived. Today, this is their last stronghold. Like most Australian mammals, they're marsupials. While they may appear dog-like, devils are more closely related to kangaroos than canines. And being marsupial, they rear their young in a pouch. A few weeks ago, this female gave birth to 40 young, each the size of a grain of rice. Inside her pouch, she has just 4 teats. So only 4 young will survive. A devil's race for survival begins early. It's a tough start, but this mum will dedicate most of her year to looking after the 4 babies who survive. She overcame extraordinary odds to reach adulthood. Now it's her turn to raise the next generation. Marsupials like the devils live here because Tasmania was once connected to mainland Australia. The island and its inhabitants became isolated some 12,000 years ago when sea levels rose following the last ice age. But Tasmania is a window on a far more ancient past. Some of these forests have barely changed since dinosaurs walked the Earth, when the southern continents were a single landmass called Gondwana. There is still a creature here whose ancestors roamed that ancient supercontinent. It lives in Tasmania's rivers and is one of the island's longest-lived survivors. the Tasmanian giant lobster. Weighing up to 5 kilos and a meter long, they're the biggest freshwater invertebrates on our planet, taking some 40 years to reach full size. Tasmania's isolation, together with the lack of sizable predators, may be one reason why they grow so massive. But they're not entirely free from threat. Tasmanian platypuses are enormous, as much as 3 times heavier than their mainland counterparts. It's an adaptation to the cooler southern climate. This male is after tiny invertebrates found on the riverbed, including young lobsters. And to stay warm in winter, he must find a lot. He needs to keep moving. With no large predators to worry them, platypuses here get about in an unusual way. Only in Tasmania does the platypus walk between rivers in broad daylight. Out of water, it's easy to see why the platypus was once dismissed as a fraud, the work of a hoaxer. But down here, he's in his element. His strange assemblage of body parts soon begins to make sense. Webbed feet help him move, while his otter-like fur keeps him warm. His beaver-like tail stores fat. But the platypus is best known for its duck-like bill, which it uses to find food. Underwater, he's completely blind. Not ideal for avoiding rocks. But some 40,000 receptors in the bill detect electrical signals given off by the muscles of prey animals. With the need to eat a lot just to keep warm, a platypus can stay on the hunt for some 12 hours a day. Though also found on the mainland, Tasmania's platypuses are by far the biggest and boldest. They, like others, are adapted to the island's isolation and cooler climate. Lying 240 kilometres south of Australia, Tasmania is surrounded by a vast expanse of open ocean. To the west, the next landfall is South America, thousands of kilometers away. To the south lies the great Antarctic continent. And as winter comes to an end, new arrivals come ashore to breed. penguins. Hidden among the rocks, this female has 2 newly hatched chicks, but nothing to feed them. Her partner left some 14 hours ago and is yet to return. He's out fishing, but quite unlike any other penguin, he must wait for nightfall to leave the water. Gulls and birds of prey patrol the coast by day. It's only safe to return after sunset. That is because these are little penguins. At only 30 centimeters tall, they're the smallest penguins in the world. And with nests several hundred meters inland, the only safe way to get there is to make a dash in the darkness. There's safety in numbers. With hundreds of nests in the colony, the night soon fills with the calls of returning adults. The sound of early spring on Tasmania's coast. This will be a welcome meal for the newly hatched chicks. The little penguin's presence is a reminder of Antarctica's proximity. But while early spring brings them ashore to breed, it also brings wild and unpredictable weather. Prevailing winds carry most of the bad weather from the west. And Tasmania's mountains cause much of the rain to fall on the western half of the island. The result divides Tasmania in two, with a wet western side and a dry eastern side. Some western areas are among the wettest in all of Australia. It rains here nearly every day. And all the water supports a surprising spectacle. Caught in a bizarre trap, these insects are doomed. How they got stuck only becomes apparent as night falls. These strange lights belong to the larvae of a type of gnat. The light is formed by a chemical reaction in the larva's abdomen and can be turned on and off at will. Sticky threads hang from its silk and mucus-laden nest. Insects drawn to the light are ensnared, then devoured. Each glowworm's thread is made up almost entirely of water, so the high rainfall in Tasmania's wet west provides ideal conditions. And the rain that supports these tiny glowworms also sustains one of the largest organisms on the planet. Mountain ash. They are a type of eucalyptus, fast-growing trees that evolved on the dry Australian mainland. In Tasmania, they've become giants. Strangely, for trees living in a wet forest, they need fire to reproduce. The mountain ash stores its seeds in small pods, which are released as the pods burn. Beneath the ash, the seeds live on, quickly germinating without competition from other plants. This makes sense in a dry habitat with regular fire. But not in Tasmania's wet forests. Young mountain ash can grow at a rate of several meters a year. All that holds them back is the next fire or a lack of water. And that is the secret behind their staggering height. In Tasmania's damp west, fire is so infrequent, these trees keep growing for centuries. Those standing in this valley all germinated following the same devastating fire 400 years ago. Today, they reach almost 100 meters into the sky. They may have evolved on the dry Australian mainland, but it's Tasmania's wet forests that have turned mountain ash trees into the tallest flowering plants on Earth. The moisture-laden air that blows in from Tasmania's west brings several meters of rainfall each year. Although it can rain most days, winter and spring are the wettest times, and seasonal waterfalls burst into life. All who live here must adapt to the regular downpours and cooler temperatures. And like so many of Tasmania's species, their adaptations set them apart. It may not look like it, but this is the closest living relative of the platypus. The echidna, Australia's most widespread native mammal. But while mainland echidnas are all spines, this Tasmanian one is mostly covered in hair to help keep him warm. The milder spring months mean an abundance of his favourite food, ants. But when you're this hairy, your food gets stuck everywhere, which is a pain when it can bite back. Time to move on. As spring turns to summer, Tasmania's inhabitants get some relief from the wild and cool weather. It's now that the young devils are ready to leave the den. They've been out of their mother's pouch for a while, but have remained safely hidden away. Fully weaned, this is the start of their independence. This young female will have to learn to survive and find food all by herself. What's more, she and her sibling are much smaller than an adult. They could easily be killed. This will be her way out of danger. Heavier adults can't climb, so there are some benefits to being small. Over the next few months, she'll also find much of the food she needs up here in the treetops. But grubs and birds' eggs alone won't be enough to sustain her as she grows. If she's to make it to adulthood, she needs to find more substantial meals. And that brings her into direct competition with dangerous and more powerful adult devils. The scent and sound of crunching bones draw her in. But she needs to be careful. Less than half of all newly weaned youngsters make it to adulthood. If she is to survive, she needs to earn her place. There's no telling how this adult might react. Confronting a stranger at a carcass is a gamble. but one she needs to take. Spurred on by hunger, she seems to have the upper hand. It looks as though her gamble has paid off, but her competitor won't let the carcass go that easily. The adult could kill her with a single bite. But that's not how Devil Society works. Despite living most of their lives alone, devils can and do share. They defend only the amount of meat they can eat, rather than the whole carcass. The pecking order has less to do with size and strength, and more to do with whoever wants it most. As this youngster is learning, it's all about who can shout the loudest. Devils may have a fearsome reputation, but the reality is quite different. Summer brings warmer temperatures across Tasmania. While in the west it still rains frequently, summer is most apparent in the dry eastern half of the island. The driest areas of Tasmania receive 80% less rainfall than the wettest. Here, the landscape is more reminiscent of parts of the Australian mainland. For marsupials that graze the open grasslands, there's a bounty of fresh shoots in these warm summer months. And although life here may appear more typically Australian, the effect of Tasmania's isolation is felt just as strongly in this dry half of the island. It's given this group of wallabies something of a Tasmanian twist. They've turned white. About 100 of them live within this population. They're so poorly camouflaged that anywhere else they'd be easily killed. On Tasmania, however, there aren't any predators big enough to kill a wallaby, so many live full adult lives. And without the normal controls, their numbers are growing. But although this may appear a predator-free paradise, there are killers here. One of Tasmania's deadliest animals lives in these dry forests. It's a species of ant known as the jack jumper. Jack jumpers evolved on the ancient Gondwanan supercontinent. Workers hunt alone, a very primitive behaviour among ants, which are mainly social. And instead of using scent to hunt, they rely on acute vision. They sting their victims to death with a venom that can kill humans, making these one of the deadliest animals in all of Australia. Jack jumper ants are particularly abundant in this dry half of Tasmania. Their nests are small mounds within which their larvae are raised. Workers cover the nest with dark materials to help absorb warmth in the cooler southern climate. In midsummer, however, temperatures soar, and the nest risks overheating. But jack jumpers have a surprising way of coping with the intense sunlight. On hotter days, they switch building materials. Now the workers cover the nest in white stones. These reflect the sun's energy, keeping the young cool inside. It's an inventive solution to Tasmania's changing seasons. The dry eastern forests can be a challenging place in the heat of midsummer. But one of Tasmania's few marsupial predators avoids the worst of this heat by hunting at night. It's the eastern quoll, a close relative of the Tasmanian devil. They're very rare, but summer sees an increase in numbers as juveniles leave the den. Quolls are solitary hunters, and in summer are drawn to these dry pasture lands. There's a rich bounty of moths and grubs at this time of year. But with lots of youngsters around, competition can be intense. It's every quoll for itself. Like Tasmanian devils, eastern quolls were once found on the Australian mainland. Today, this dry eastern half of the island is their last refuge. And with an abundance of summer insects, they have every chance of thriving. Summer is almost over. And as autumn arrives, the stage is set for a bizarre ritual. Familiar screams fill the forest. It may not look like it, but these devils are becoming amorous. An eligible male clings on as a female guides him back to the den. Female devils are receptive 3 times over a short period during the breeding season. To ensure the fittest offspring, she'll try to mate with as many big males as she can. And to increase his chances of fatherhood, he must keep her in here for as long as possible. Inside the den, he moves her around in an effort to mate. To protect her from his biting grip, the skin around her neck has thickened over the last few weeks. Though it may appear aggressive, this is part of a bizarre and complicated breeding system. They'll remain in here, mating regularly, for several days. In spite of that fearsome scream, there is a sensitive side to these much maligned creatures. Far from devilish, they are simply very determined survivors. The devil mating season marks autumn's arrival. Each evening, flocks of Cape Barren geese return to their roost. Their silhouettes in the sunset, a sign that the year is ending. Back on the coast, the longer nights bring with them a stunning spectacle. The Southern Lights, a reminder that the next stop from here is Antarctica. For Tasmania's little penguins, the breeding season has finished. Only adults remain at the colony. They've spent the last few weeks fattening up at sea, almost doubling their weight. The efforts of raising chicks have left them in need of a new set of feathers. Little penguins go through what's known as catastrophic molt, shedding some 10,000 feathers all at once. Because their feathers keep them warm and waterproof, they can't return to sea until they've grown new ones. For 3 long weeks, they're stuck on dry land, unable to feed. It's a long wait for a little penguin. The year is almost over. And high in the mountains, there's time for one last surprise. These are southern beech trees, unique to Tasmania. Their changing colour makes for an autumn unlike anywhere else in Australia. These are the only trees on the continent to drop their leaves during the cooler months. The southern beech tree's closest living relatives are found thousands of kilometres away in South America. This rare splash of autumnal colour lasts just a few weeks as across the whole of Tasmania temperatures begin to drop. June marks the start of the winter season, and for the Devils, the beginning of new life. With young already inside her pouch, she will provide milk for them through the harshest months. Her life and theirs tied to Tasmania's seasonal cycle. Just 12,000 years ago, Tasmania separated from its mainland parent. The island is young, yet rich in life, and with a long and ancient past. Now, Tasmania and the animals it supports are on a different course to the rest of Australia. It is, as a result, home to a caste as weird as they are wonderful. Indeed, there's nowhere on Earth quite like Tasmania. The Jura Mountains on the French-Swiss border are in the grip of winter. The ground has been frozen solid for months. This is a tough place in which to live. I'm told that clearings like these could be the home of a real giant. At this time of the year, it'll be in hiding. But evidence of its existence, these strange mounds, is everywhere. Inside here, deep down and protected from the cold, the giant is asleep. Beneath the thatch of spruce needles lies a maze of tunnels and chambers, the home of hibernating wood ants. Individually, they are tiny, but they're members of a giant super colony. When temperatures rise, over 500 million of them will emerge and dominate this landscape. Scientists are only just working out how ants manage to survive up here. But in fact, there's a much greater and more profound mystery that has brought me up this mountain. Among ants, cooperation between colonies is very rare. Warfare is common. Yet these nests over a great area live at peace with one another. This may sound like an epic tale of war and peace, but does it also contain an echo of human nature? These ants, in some extraordinary way, have exchanged war for peace. It's now recognized as one of the largest of all insect super societies. And its very existence conflicts with some of the laws of evolution as we presently understand them. It's been a long, cold winter here in the Swiss Jura Mountains. It's hard to believe that any insect could survive in this frozen landscape. But now change is in the air. Soon, ant nests all over this mountain will come to life. Some of these mounds are independent colonies, but others are part of one huge super colony. Over the coming months, I'll be looking at the differences between these two wood ant societies, one that wages war with all its neighbours, and the other which welcomes them and lives at peace. As the grip of winter eases, sentries emerge from the mounds to check on conditions. They detect the sign that they've been waiting for. The temperatures are rising. Spring is on the way. The ants survive the winter thanks to their own central heating system. Warmth given off by the slow decomposition of the dead vegetation in the nest's fabric, and that prevented them all from freezing. Now, by swarming all over the surface of the nest, they're recharging their batteries, absorbing heat directly from the sun's rays. nest behavior only happens over 1 or 2 days in the early spring. The worker ants have emerged into the sunshine and are now clumping together. And they're not just sunbathing. It could well be that the ultraviolet rays of the sun cure them of any infections from viruses or fungi that may have happened during their long sleep underground. You can almost feel the enthusiasm with which these little creatures are enjoying their sunbathe. This is unusual enough, but now here is something truly extraordinary. There is a queen. She's almost twice the size of her subjects. She's also the most important member of her family. And what's more, there's another. To see a queen exposed and vulnerable outside the nest is very rare indeed. There's one. And there's another, shining wonderfully in the sunshine. A normal wood ant nest usually has just a single queen who lays all the eggs, but clearly this is not so here. There's another, several of them. Amazing. After a few moments in the sunshine, the only time they see daylight in the whole year, the queens disappear and make their way back to the brood chambers deep in the nest. Those unwilling to go are dragged back. We may call them queens, but there's no sovereign rule here. The workers govern by consensus, and they decide when and where the queens will go. There may be hundreds of queens in this single nest, and there are over 1,000 such mounds as this, all interconnected. So, across the super colony, there may be as many as 1 million queens. It's now early April. The queens returned below to prepare for the egg-laying, started a race against the clock. They must complete their most important work below in the next 2 months. Using infrared light, which is invisible to the ants, we can watch them inside their nest without disturbing them. Most of the first eggs to be laid will produce the next generation of breeding individuals, the queens and the males, both of whom will have wings. Inside the 1,000 nests of the super colony, over 500 million mostly unrelated worker ants cooperate to ensure that the queens and the males will be ready for their mating flights in mid-June. With all these developments on the way, it's imperative that the workers collect more food as soon as possible. But many of the mounds are still surrounded by snow, so the workers can't reach their feeding grounds. But there's something they can collect: heat. The nest needs more heat than that which comes from the rotting vegetation, if the eggs are to hatch in time for their June appointment. Now, however, the ants have another source of warmth. Using their bodies as solar panels, the ants harvest the sunlight. We have a heat-sensitive camera that detects differences in temperature. The nest appears black because it's hotter than the surrounding environment. It shows a similar difference in the ants. Those going down into the nest are black because they've been heated by the sun, whereas those coming out are white because they're cold, having transferred their body heat to their charges in the brood chambers below. It's this kind of selfless collaboration that is the key to success of any ant colony. In normal ant colonies, all the workers are related to one another and to the queen. And the theory is that that is why they all cooperate. But that is not the case here. There are hundreds of queens here. Over 1,000 have been counted in a single nest. So all the workers can't have the same parents, and genetics have confirmed that this is so. It's this cooperation between unrelated ants in a single colony that appears to be rewriting the rules of insect evolution. But we still don't really know how this has come about. Spring is now well on the way. The snow has disappeared and colour comes to the meadows. By late April, there are piles of eggs in the nest and the first larvae are hatching. The workers labour unceasingly to ensure that the growing brood will be ready to emerge in 6 weeks' time, at the peak of the short Jura summer. But not every ant nest on this mountain can be so focused. Some will soon have to deal with threats to their very survival. Just a short distance away, on the borders of the super colony's woodland territory, there are other wood ants. The mounds here, on this side of the mountain, look exactly the same as those of the super colony. And so do the ants themselves. The inhabitants of each nest here are all the offspring of its single queen, and the colonies compete aggressively with one another. After the winter hibernation, the territories between that nest over there and this one here have become blurred, and the frontier has to be re-established. And in order to do that, workers from both nests are now scouring the ground. And that brings neighbouring ants into contact for the first time this season. When foragers from the different nests meet, they immediately recognise that they're from rival families. They then dash back to their nests, and within minutes, both colonies know that territory on their frontier is being disputed. Armies assemble. This is war, and the weapons being used are chemical. formic acid. I can smell it in the air. They're squirting it from the ends of their abdomen. And if they can bite their opponents so that the formic acid gets beneath the outer shell of an ant, it will dissolve its internal organs. As they grapple, each tries to restrain its opponent by clamping its jaws around a leg or an antenna. Soldiers from both sides tug at their opponent's limbs. It can take 7 ants to subdue a single enemy. One holds each leg, and the 7th uses its mandibles to cut open sections of their opponent's exoskeleton, exposing the insides. An attacker brings forward its abdomen under its body and squirts acid onto its victim. Battles are going on everywhere. Each colony carries its own chemical badge, invisible to our eyes but clear to the ants' sensitive antennae. Fighters touch each other to confirm whose side they're on. Here and there, individuals clamber up the vegetation. Are they having a rest? Or are they surveying progress to see where help is needed? The smell of formic acid reaches the colony, and more ants from both sides run to join the battle. These wars can continue for over a week. At their peak, many thousands are fighting and thousands are killed. The victors will certainly have enlarged their territory. But some say they have also gained other rewards. They're taking off the bodies of their victims and carrying them back to the nest over there to feast upon them. Both sides have suffered heavy losses. For the ants in the meadow, it has been a costly start to the year. Higher up the mountain, in the territory of the super colony, the inhabitants of different nests are also meeting. But here, things are very different. These ants come from a mound about half a mile away. If that mound was a separate, independent colony, then these, when they land there, will be savagely attacked. But let's see what happens. At first, the resident ant makes an aggressive gesture. But but then the other strokes the first's antennae. That gesture is a request for food, and the other obligingly feeds her. This behavior, known as trophallaxis, is in itself not unusual. Most ants do it at times. What is unique is that these ants are almost certainly unrelated, yet they treat each other as if they were from the same nest. They do this because they share the supercolony scent, a chemical signature that is transferred together with the food. In one experiment, scientists fed a distinctive chemical to a nest on one side of the supercolony, and 8 weeks later, that same chemical appeared far away on the other side. It's this sharing of food between over 500 million individuals that makes this super society so truly remarkable. Because of this, supercolony ants can move freely between mounds, and they have, as a result, created over 100 kilometres of trails that link over 1,000 nests. These trails not only allow the ants to make new nests deep in the forest, they also give all the members of the supercolony access to resources of great value to them. It comes from the spruce trees. The ants don't feed directly on the spruce trees. They become farmers, and these are their flocks. Aphids. The presence of the ants keeps insect predators at bay, so the aphids can feed unmolested. They drink the tree's sap and excrete what they don't need as a sugary liquid called honeydew, and the ants love it. Just as human farmers milk their cows, so the ants stroke the aphids with their antennae to persuade them to release their honeydew. Once the aphids are milked and the ants have drunk as much honeydew as they can carry, they head down the tree, abdomens bulging, and return to the nest. The honeydew is not only food with which to sustain themselves. Some use it to raise the heat of their bodies well above normal and so warm the atmosphere within the nest, a valuable ability in the fickle climate of the Jura. The spruce trees themselves also produce a substance that the ants can use directly. These ants have collected little flakes of resin. That's a sort of gum that oozes from the broken twig of a coniferous tree. The tree uses it to seal off an injury. But what are the ants using it for? Inside the nest, the extra warmth produced by honeydew helps the queens to keep laying and the larvae to keep growing. However, constant warmth can create problems. Despite regular cleaning, diseases can thrive. The ants have a remarkable solution to that problem. They cover the surface of the mounds with tiny nuggets of resin and also take it into the chambers below. One nest contained over 4 kilos of it. It is, in fact, ant medicine. The ants combine acid from their bodies with the resin and so produce a very effective antibiotic. This is one of the most sophisticated animal pharmacologies known to science. It's been shown that wood ants living in nests that contain resin are better able to survive diseases than those that don't, and their eggs are far less likely to be infected by fungi. This immense, peaceful super colony has few enemies. But now, at the end of May, a new threat has arrived. The Jura is famous for producing some of Europe's finest cheese. For generations, farmers have made small clearings in the woods to create meadows where cattle can graze. Only now is it warm enough for cows to be brought up to these high pastures. Somehow, the ants need to make sure that they're left alone and that nothing damages their nests. And that's a considerable challenge, even for a super colony. But these ants are very determined. When one squirts its acid, others follow suit. The result is a coordinated barrage. The cows are not harmed, but they do get a dose of acid in the nose, which they don't like, and they tend thereafter to avoid these mounds. By now, in June, the larvae have become big and greedy. They must be given special care because they will produce the next generation of royalty, so the workers labour hard to meet their demands.
In summer, hundreds of thousands of eggs are hatching every day, and honeydew is not enough. The ants go in search of something else, a supplement. Fresh meat.
The lush green hills and mountains of the Jura are now teeming with all sorts of life, and nearly all of it is potential food. The ants spread out from the nest, scouring every square inch of the ground in search of prey. As the hunters approach, those that can take flight. The ants' vision is not very acute. They can only see a target if it moves. A wolf spider, however, can see the ants clearly. But as long as she doesn't move, they won't know that she's here. She's carrying a little sack full of eggs. She decides to run for it, and her sudden movement alerts the hunters. That first fleeting touch by an ant left a faint scent mark, and now fellow hunters can home in on their target. The spider has a venomous bite, but that is no use now. 8 powerful legs are her only hope. But her speed is the very thing that enables the ants to follow her. Slow motion reveals the basic ant hunting technique. Lunge with jaws open and hope for the best. At last, an ant manages to grab her. Like a pride of lions taking down a buffalo, the ants surround her. 2 restrain their catch, while another delivers the flesh-dissolving acid. The wolf spider is just one of many victims. Alone, an ant can take only the smallest prey, but by working as a team, they can capture creatures many times their size. A super colony can make hundreds of millions of kills every year. Beetles, caterpillars, worms, flies, they will tackle almost any living thing. Whatever the prey, it's first cut up and eaten by the workers, who then regurgitate it to feed to the larvae. Once they have grown to full size, the larvae spin silk cocoons for themselves. Inside each, a featureless larva is changing into an adult. Their time in the sun is approaching. Wood ants live in one of the most highly organized and complex of insect societies. They fight wars over territory, they hunt in packs and farm other species. They build complex homes with central heating, They produce their own medicine. And one group of them we now know has made another advance.
The super colony has extended this collaboration beyond the frontiers of the family to form a super society of such dimensions that we can perhaps begin to compare it with that other great social creature on this planet, ourselves.
People studying the origins of human culture suggest that shared myths were one of the factors that bound early human societies together. But what about ants?
Well, in many species, it is certainly the case that all the individuals are very closely related to one another. But that is not so in the super colony. And in some days in June, such colonies continue to break the rules.
As midsummer approaches, the Jura briefly becomes a paradise of wild flowers. And something new appears inside each of the nests. Wings. The royal generation, male and female, has finally hatched, and both will be able to fly.
Winged individuals are the only ones that are capable of breeding. The males are little more than animated insemination devices, and they will soon achieve their purpose and die. But the females, which are emerging just now, this is the beginning of a long life of servitude.
When the weather is just right, sunny and not too windy, the nests suddenly become covered with winged ants. There's an excitement in the air. The males, which have matte black bodies, are incapable of feeding themselves. So once they leave the nest, they only have a short time to live. There's no time to waste. The virgin queens, who are also black but splendidly shiny, have a rather clumsy beginning to their lives. They're heavy with fat reserves and swollen ovaries, so that getting airborne is not easy for them. This is the most important flight of their lives, but it's also their first. Many test their wings before takeoff. They may need several attempts before they achieve complete flight control. Over a few days, 500,000 winged ants of both sexes take to the air and head off for new territory. They then all assemble here in the heart of the super colony.
It's not clear how they find this meadow, but year after year, virgin males and females from across the super colony are drawn here for their nuptial flight.
The queens congregate in small patches of taller plants and begin to release sex pheromones, airborne chemicals that attract males. Detecting this scent on the wind, the males home in on the females. Virgin queens may only get the chance to mate once, and they need to obtain enough sperm to fertilize the eggs they will be producing for years to come. But with plenty of males in the meadow, they can afford to be choosy. The males are so driven they even try to mate with females who are already doing so. Those males fortunate enough to couple quickly make the most of their few remaining hours of life. Once they've mated, their service to the colony is over, and they die of exhaustion. The queens now have no further use for their wings, and they try to get rid of them. But they are necessarily rather firmly fixed. Trying to remove a backpack with your feet, even if you have 6 of them, is clearly a frustrating process. Eventually, the meadow is marked with little drifts of discarded wings. Such breeding swarms are fairly typical of ants generally. But now the queens of the super colony do something much less common. To understand why they behave so differently, we must first return to the spring battlefields of the ordinary wood ants outside the empire of the super colony.
The warring colonies on this side of the mountain have now accepted their frontiers, and summer brings a brief pause in their battles. The mating system they use may seem at first sight to be the same as that of the super colony, but in fact it's fundamentally different. Every decision taken by a mated female is fraught with danger.
The colony this queen comes from is at war with all its neighbours. So if she meets any of them, they will try to kill her. She needs a home, but she can't build it without help. Her solution to the problem is extraordinary and radical. Under this rock, a different species, field ants, have built a nest. These small ants, less than a third of her size, are common and live in meadows on the edge of the forest. The only way this wood ant queen can get her own nest is by taking over one of theirs. She will become a parasitic queen. She lurks near the nest, trying to pick up the scent of the field ants. She avoids groups of them because they could overpower her. Instead, she tackles individuals. There's a brief duel, and then she retreats. But each time, she's left with a trace of their scent, so that she slowly begins to build up a chemical disguise. These contests go on for several days. Gradually, her disguise becomes more and more convincing. The entrance to the field ant's nest is unguarded. Cautiously, she enters. Inside, she is vastly outnumbered. Wood ant behavior inside a field ant nest has never been observed in detail before, let alone filmed. So what happens next must be interpreted with caution. There are fights, and most wood ant queens are in fact killed at this stage. But after she has endured repeated attacks, some of the field ants become less aggressive towards her. Eventually, a confused field ant worker feeds the wood ant queen, and when it does that, the fate of the nest is sealed. The wood ant queen has now acquired the colony's scent. She oozes queenly pheromones, and the field ants seem entranced by their new foreign queen. The gamble has paid off, and she has a fully functioning nest ready to receive her first batch of eggs. Taking over a nest of field ants is the way typical wood ants start a new family. But how about the queens from a super colony with their multi-family communal nests? Have they found a more peaceful strategy?
Each mated female has to set out on her own journey. If she's to become a true queen, she has to find a nest that will accept her. And that is where the tolerance of the members of the super colony is tested once again.
Being already in the heart of a super colony, these newly mated queens don't have to walk far before encountering their own kind. But even for a super colony queen, walking straight up to a busy trail is risky. If the workers she meets are not in a welcoming mood, they will tear her to pieces. Slowly, one by one, workers come to investigate her. Some seem uncertain whether to attack or not, but others lick and clean her. After a few tense moments, a worker starts to drag her towards the nest. This is a sign that she will be adopted. And now, scientists have made a further discovery. Many nests in the super colony shortcut the whole process. The winged males and the queen ants don't even bother to leave the nest. Many different families live here, so there's no need to fly away to avoid inbreeding. The winged queens can simply mate with one of the males that hatched here. Perhaps this unusual behavior is the next stage in the evolution of the super colony. With these innovative mating systems, the super colony queens don't take the same risks as normal wood ant queens. They don't need to infiltrate the nest of field ants to start a family. The workers just build new nests when needed, enabling the super colony to extend deep into the forest where there are no field ants. It's changes in behavior like this that most likely gave rise to the super colony in the first place and colonized this new habitat with all its riches. It's possible that this kind of cooperation between different nests is becoming more common among ants. New super colonies are still being discovered in different species across the world. Are we perhaps witnessing the next stage of the social conquest of the Earth?
The super colony consists of literally thousands of different families, all working in cooperation. It's a development that mankind achieved a very long time ago and could be seen as one of the reasons why we have come to dominate so many parts of the planet. Could it be that peace is the winning strategy on this ant mountain, too?